She walked into the room, wearing a diamond choker that cost more than most people earn in a decade, clutching my husband's arm like he was a hunting trophy. Tiffany Baines thought her limited edition Hermes bag and her new status as the future Mrs. Vance made her untouchable. She laughed right in my face, calling me a penny-pinching nobody who didn't belong in high society. She didn't know the truth. She didn't know that the luxury hotel we were standing in, my father built it. The champagne she was guzzling, it came from my family's private vineyard, and the credit card she was using to humiliate me. I was the one who authorized the limit. Watch closely, because the mistress who flaunted her wealth is about to realize she was bragging to the woman who owned it all. Celine Vance sat at the kitchen island of the modest 3-bedroom suburban home she shared with her husband, Michael. The granite was chipped on the corner, a defect they had negotiated a discount for when they bought the place 5 years ago. She ran her finger over the rough edge, a small smile playing on her lips. To anyone looking in, Celine was the picture of suburban mediocrity. She drove a 5-year-old Honda clipped coupons for the grocery store and worked as a freelance graphic designer. She looked at the clock. 7:30 p.m. Michael was late again. Working late on the Anderson account, he had texted at 5:00 p.m. Celine sighed, standing up to cover the lasagna with foil. She loved Michael, or at least she loved the man he used to be. When they met in college, Michael Vance was a scholarship student with holes in his shoes and a fire in his belly. He was ambitious, yes, but he was kind. He hadn't cared about money because he never had any. That was why Celine had fallen for him, and that was why she had never told him who she really was. To Michael, she was Celine Miller, an orphan raised by a distant aunt, struggling to make ends meet. In reality, she was Celine Sterling, the sole heiress to the Sterling global conglomerate, a portfolio that included shipping lines, luxury hotel chains, and half the real estate in Manhattan. Her father, Alexander Sterling, was a man whose net worth was discussed on Forbes in the top 10 bracket. She had hidden it to find true love. She wanted someone who loved Celine, not the Sterling billions. But lately the man she chose seemed to be slipping away. The front door opened with a heavy thud. Michael walked in, but the air didn't shift with the warmth it usually did. It shifted with the scent of perfume. Baccarat Rouge 540. Heavy, expensive, and definitely not Celine's scent. "You're home," Celine said, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "I made lasagna." Michael didn't look at her. He tossed his keys on the counter keys to the new BMW he had leased last month against her advice. "I'm not hungry." "Michael, we need to talk," Celine said softly. "You've been distant. The credit card bill came in today. There's a charge for a bracelet at Cartier for $12,000. I assume that's a mistake." Michael froze. He slowly turned to face her. His face wasn't apologetic. It was sneering, a look of utter contempt that Celine had never seen before. "It wasn't a mistake," Michael said, his voice cold. "Then, who is it for?" Celine asked, her heart hammering against her ribs. "It certainly isn't for me." "It's for someone who appreciates the finer things in life, Celine," Michael snapped. "Someone who doesn't make me feel guilty for wanting to live like a successful man. I'm an architect at a top firm, yet I come home to this mediocrity. You act like we're destitute." "I act like we're responsible," Celine countered, her voice steady despite the shock. "Michael, who is she?" Michael laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "Her name is Tiffany, and unlike you, she knows how to navigate the world I belong in. She's a consultant for the firm. She has class. She has taste. Class. Celine raised an eyebrow. Sleeping with a married man is class. We're done, Celine, Michael said, pulling a folded envelope from his jacket pocket and slamming it onto the counter. I've outgrown you. I need a partner who shines not a shadow, who counts pennies. I'm filing for divorce, and since I've been paying the mortgage for the last 2 years, while you played around with your little art projects, I expect you to vacate the house. Celine looked at the papers. She felt a strange sensation. It wasn't just heartbreak. It was a clarifying, icy rage. He thought he was paying the mortgage. He didn't know that her freelance money had quietly paid off the principal of the loan 3 years ago, to lower their interest rates. You're leaving me for a woman because she likes to spend money, Celine asked quietly. I'm leaving you because you're embarrassing, Michael spat. Next week is the Sterling Charity Gala, the biggest networking event of the year. Tiffany got us invitations. I can't walk into a room like that with you wearing a dress from a department store rack. I need to make partner Celine. Tiffany is my ticket. The irony was so thick it almost choked her. The Sterling Charity Gala, hosted by her father. The event she had avoided for 5 years to keep her cover. Get out, Celine whispered. Gladly. Michael sneered. I'm staying at Tiffany's penthouse tonight. Pack your bags. I want you out by Friday. He turned and walked out, leaving Celine standing in the kitchen of a house she owned, rejected by a husband whose career she had secretly bankrolled through anonymous commissions. She picked up her phone. Her hand trembled not from sadness but from the adrenaline of a sleeping dragon waking up. She dialed a number she hadn't called in 3 years. The Sterling residence who is speaking, the crisp British accent of the butler answered. Alfred, Celine said, her voice shifting from the submissive housewife to the commanding heiress she was born to be. Tell my father I'm coming home, and tell him I'm finally ready to wear the crown. 3 days had passed since Michael walked out. Celine had moved back into the Sterling estate, a sprawling mansion in the Hamptons that made the White House look like a guest cottage. The reunion with her father Alexander had been emotional, filled with I told you so's that he politely swallowed for the sake of his daughter's tears. But the tears had dried up quickly. Now, there was only the mission. You want to attend the gala? Alexander Sterling asked, sitting behind his mahogany desk, looking at Celine. He was a formidable man, 60 years old, with silver hair and eyes that could cut glass. Not just attend, Dad, Celine said, adjusting the silk cuffs of her blouse. I want to host it. I want to be announced. It's time Celine Sterling came back from the dead. Alexander smiled a wolfish grin. That's my girl. But if you're going to re-enter society, you need the wardrobe. I'm on it, Celine said. An hour later, Celine walked into Maison du Ciel, the most exclusive high-fashion boutique in the city. This was a place where you needed an appointment just to look at the window display. She was dressed simply, jeans and a white t-shirt, oversized sunglasses covering her face. She wanted to browse quietly before her private fitting scheduled for later. She was looking at a midnight blue velvet gown when a shrill, grating voice cut through the air. Oh, look, Michael. Ideally, I'd want something in crimson, to match the interior of the Porsche. Celine froze. She peered through a rack of silk scarves. There they were. Michael, looking uncomfortable in a suit that was slightly too tight and hanging off his arm, was a woman who looked like she had been dipped in liquid gold and rolled in diamonds. Tiffany Baines. She was stunning in a plastic manufactured way. Blonde extensions, overly filled lips, and wearing a white bodycon dress that left little to the imagination. She was loudly snapping her fingers at a sales assistant. "You bring me the Platinum Collection and get my fiancé a glass of water. Sparkling, not tap." Michael looked up and his eyes widened. He spotted Celine. For a second, he looked panicked. Then, seeing her jeans and t-shirt, his arrogance returned. He whispered something to Tiffany. Tiffany whipped her head around her eyes, scanning Celine up and down with a look of pure disgust. They walked over. "Well, well," Tiffany said, her voice dripping with faux sweetness. "Michael told me his ex-wife was plain, but he didn't tell me she was homeless." Celine stood her ground. "Hello, Michael. Tiffany, I assume. That's Ms. Baines to you." Tiffany scoffed. She lifted her hand, flashing a ring. It was a gaudy yellow diamond. "Michael just bought this. It cost more than that sad little car you drive." "What are you doing here? The charity bin is 3 blocks down." "I'm shopping," Celine said, calm. "Just like you." Tiffany laughed, a loud, cackling sound that drew the attention of the security guards. "Shopping here? Honey, a scarf in this store costs $5,000. Do you even have $5,000 to your name without Michael's paycheck?" Michael stepped forward, trying to look authoritative. "Selena, don't embarrass yourself. Leave. You don't belong here. This isn't Target." "I have every right to be here," Celine said. "No, you don't," Tiffany snapped. She grabbed a dress off the rack, a shimmering silver gown. "See this? This is a Vautour original. It's $20,000. I'm going to buy it right now, just to wear it to the Sterling Gala. I bet you've never even smelled a dress like this." Tiffany turned to the sales associate, a young woman named Sarah, who looked terrified. "Excuse me. Tell this person to leave. She's disturbing the high-end clientele. She obviously can't afford anything." Sarah looked at Celine, then back at Tiffany. "Ma'am, everyone is welcome to browse. I spend $50,000 a month in this district," Tiffany screamed, causing other shoppers to gasp. "If you don't kick this peasant out, I will call the owner. I know people. My fiancé is a top architect." Michael looked nervous now. "Tiffany, babe, maybe we just ignore her." "No, I want her out." Tiffany got right in Celine's face. The smell of her perfume was suffocating. "Listen to me, you little mouse. You lost. Michael is mine. The money is mine. The life is mine. You are nothing. You are a nobody who coupons for cat food. Now get out of my sight before I have security drag you out." Celine felt the anger bubbling, but she pushed it down. It wasn't time yet. Not yet. "Enjoy the dress, Tiffany." Celine said, her voice dangerously low. "It looks tight." Celine turned and walked out of the store, head held high. Behind her, she heard Tiffany screeching. "Did she just say, 'I'm fat'? Michael, do something." As Celine stepped onto the sidewalk, she pulled out her phone. She dialed her father's personal assistant. "Hello, Miss Sterling." "Hi, Jessica," Celine said, looking back at the boutique window where Tiffany was aggressively waving a credit card. "I need a favor. The boutique Maison du Ciel. Who owns the building lease?" There was the sound of typing. "That would be Sterling Commercial Properties, ma'am." Celine smiled, a cold, terrifying smile. "Excellent. Call the manager. Tell them I want the entire Platinum Collection reserved for a private viewing at the estate tomorrow. And specifically, make sure the silver Vautour gown is marked as unavailable." "Consider it done." Celine hung up. Tiffany thought she had won the battle at the boutique. She had no idea that Celine was about to buy the battlefield. The morning sun over the Hamptons didn't just shine, it seemed to caress the manicured lawns of the Sterling estate. Inside the master suite, Celine stood before a floor-to-ceiling mirror, but she wasn't looking at her reflection. She was looking at a stranger. For 5 years, she had worn the mask of a suburban housewife. She had worn cotton blends, clipped her nails short, and worried about electric bills. She had dimmed her own light to make Michael feel brighter. Standing there now, surrounded by the opulence she was born into, she felt a phantom limb pain, the ache of the love she had amputated 3 days ago. "The stylist is ready for you, Miss Sterling," Alfred, the family's longtime butler, announced from the doorway. His voice was soft, carrying a note of paternal sadness. He had watched her grow up, watched her run away for love, and watched her return broken. "Send them in, Alfred," Celine said, turning away from the window. "And Alfred, have the security team do a final sweep of the guest list for the gala. I want to make sure Michael Vance and Tiffany Baines are still seated at table 19. Alfred raised a refined eyebrow. "Table 19, madam, by the kitchen doors. That seems rather drafty." "It's perfect," Celine said, her eyes cold. Meanwhile, 40 miles away in the city, the atmosphere was far less serene. Tiffany Baines stormed into Maison du Ciel like a hurricane in 6-inch Louboutins. She was vibrating with adrenaline. Today was the day she would secure the silver vautour gown. She had spent the entire night awake, fantasizing about the moment she would walk into the Sterling gala. She imagined the photographers snapping her picture, the whispers of envy, and most importantly, the validation that she had truly arrived. Michael trailed behind her, looking paler than usual. He checked his banking app on his phone again. The balance was dangerously low. His severance package from his previous firm was gone, spent on Tiffany's lease, the car, and the ring. He was banking everything on this gala. If he could land a contract with Alexander Sterling, the money wouldn't matter. But right now, the numbers were screaming at him. "I'm here," Tiffany announced to the empty boutique, flinging her arms wide. "Bring me the dress." The manager, a tall, severe French woman named Madame Clotilde, stepped out from the back office. She did not smile. She did not offer champagne. She stood with her hands clasped in front of her black blazer, her expression unreadable. "Miss Baines," Clotilde said, her accent thick and icy. "Mr. Vance?" "We're in a hurry," Tiffany snapped, placing her gold clutch on the glass counter. "Wrap up the silver vautour, and I'll take the matching clutch. Michael, get the card." Michael reached for his wallet, his hand trembling slightly. "Right. The silver one." "I'm afraid that is impossible," Madame Clotilde said smoothly. Tiffany froze. She blinked, her false lashes fluttering like trapped moths. "Excuse me. The vautour gown is no longer available," Clotilde stated. "It has been acquired by a private collector." "Acquired?" Tiffany's voice rose an octave. "I was here yesterday. I told that little girl that nobody that I was buying it. You can't sell it to someone else. Do you know who my fiancé is?" "I am aware of Mr. Vance," Clotilde said, her eyes flicking to Michael with a hint of disdain. However, the client who purchased the gown did not merely reserve it. They purchased the entire collection. "The entire collection," Michael choked out. That's hundreds of thousands of dollars." "Indeed," Clotilde said. "The client requested exclusivity. No other pieces from the platinum line will be sold to the public until after the sterling gala. Tiffany's face turned a mottled shade of red. The vein in her forehead began to throb. This is discrimination. Who bought it? Who is she? Is it a celebrity? I bet it's some washed-up actress. I am not at liberty to disclose the client's identity, Clotilde said, signaling to the security guard near the door. However, she did leave a message for you, Miss Baines, specifically for you. Tiffany paused, her chest heaving. A message. Clotilde picked up a small cream-colored card from the counter. She read it aloud, her voice devoid of emotion. Tell Miss Baines that true class cannot be bought off a rack. It is inherited, or earned. She has done neither. Tiffany screamed. It was a primal, frustrated sound that shattered the quiet elegance of the store. She swept her arm across the counter, knocking over a display of perfumes. Bottles shattered, the scent of jasmine and amber filling the air. Tiffany. Michael grabbed her arm, looking around in panic. Stop it. You're making a scene. I don't care, Tiffany shrieked, pulling away. They humiliated me. Someone is laughing at me. Michael, fix this by the store. Do something. Ms. Baines. Clotilde said, her voice dropping to a lethal whisper. You have 5 seconds to leave my boutique before I have you arrested for destruction of property. And believe me, with the owner, we have the lawsuit will bury you. Michael dragged a sobbing, cursing Tiffany out of the store and onto the hot pavement. He felt a pit in his stomach. He looked at the woman he had destroyed his marriage for, mascara running down her face, screaming obscenities at a doorman. For the first time he wondered if Celine was doing okay. Celine who never raised her voice. Celine who made him tea when he was stressed. No, he shook the thought away. Celine is the past. Tiffany is the future. We just need to get through this gala. It's okay, baby. Michael soothed, though his heart wasn't in it. We'll find another dress, something better. And when we meet Alexander Sterling, none of this will matter. They didn't know that Alexander Sterling was currently sitting in his library, laughing as Celine recounted the story of the dress. You're vicious, my dear, Alexander said, sipping his scotch. I learned from the best, Dad, Celine replied, staring into the fire. But the dress was just the appetizer. The main course is tomorrow night. The Sterling Charity Gala was not just a party, it was an institution, held in the grand ballroom of the Sterling Imperial Hotel. It was the night when the titans of industry, politics, and old money converged to congratulate themselves on their philanthropy. The ballroom was a masterpiece of design. 10,000 white orchids hung from the ceiling, interspersed with crystal chandeliers that dripped light like liquid diamonds. The floor was polished marble, and the air smelled of expensive perfume, beeswax, and power. At 7:45 p.m., the guests began to arrive. Rolls-Royces, Bentleys, and Maybachs lined up outside the velvet ropes. The paparazzi flashes went off like strobe lights. Michael and Tiffany arrived in a stretch limousine. Michael had paid extra for the driver to open the door, trying to project an image of endless wealth. But the limo was an older model, slightly yellowed at the headlights, and the driver looked bored. Tiffany stepped out. Without the silver vautour gown, she had settled for a bright crimson dress she found at a high-end department store. It was loud, too loud. It had sequins that caught the light aggressively, and a slit that went up to her hip. In a nightclub, she would have been the queen. Here, amidst the subtle elegance of silk and chiffon, she looked like a neon sign in a museum. Smile, Michael, Tiffany hissed through her teeth, waving at photographers who were actually aiming their cameras at the senator behind them. "We need to be seen." Michael adjusted his tie. It felt tight. "I'm smiling. Just keep your voice down. These people, they value discretion. Discretion is for poor people who have something to hide." Tiffany scoffed. She hooked her arm through his and dragged him up the red carpet. They entered the ballroom, and the sheer scale of the wealth hit Michael like a physical blow. He saw the CEO of a tech giant chatting with the Duchess. He saw his old boss, the one who refused to give him a raise, begging for a moment with a venture capitalist. "Let's find our table," Michael said, scanning the room. "I requested something near the front, close to the Sterling family table." He found a steward holding a seating chart. "Vance, table for 2. The steward ran a gloved finger down the list. He paused, then looked up with a polite, tight-lipped smile. "Ah, yes, Mr. Vance. You are at table 19. 19. That's a prime number," Tiffany said smugly. "Must be front row." The steward gestured vaguely toward the back of the room. "It is in the vicinity of the service entrance, sir. Through those pillars." Michael felt his face heat up. They walked past the prime tables. Table 1, table 2, where the billionaires sat. They walked past the corporate tables. They kept walking until they reached the very edge of the room, near the swinging double doors, where waiters rushed in and out with trays of filet mignon. Table 19 was small, wobbly, and partially obscured by a large potted fern. "This is a joke," Tiffany spat, kicking the chair leg. "We're sitting with the help, Michael. Go tell them there's a mistake. Tell them you're a VIP or architect." "I can't make a scene here, Tiffany," Michael hissed, grabbing her wrist. "Look around. That's the governor over there. If we scream, we're done. Just sit down. We'll mingle later. We need to find Alexander Sterling." They sat in sullen silence. Tiffany downed a glass of champagne in one gulp and signaled for another. Michael scanned the room, desperate to make eye contact with anyone important. Suddenly, the lights in the ballroom dimmed. The murmur of conversation died down instantly. A hush fell over the room, heavy with anticipation. The orchestra, which had been playing soft jazz, swelled into a dramatic orchestral crescendo. A spotlight hit the top of the grand staircase on the far side of the room. The master of ceremonies stepped up to the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," his voice boomed, "please welcome your host for the evening, the chairman of Sterling Global, Mr. Alexander Sterling." Applause rippled through the room, polite and respectful. Alexander appeared at the top of the stairs, looking regal in a tuxedo. He waved, descending a few steps. And the MC continued, his voice rising with excitement, "Making her return to public life after 5 years abroad, the sole heiress to the Sterling Empire, his daughter." Michael frowned. "Daughter? I didn't know he had a daughter. I thought he was estranged from his family." "Who cares?" Tiffany rolled her eyes. "Probably some spoiled brat." Then she stepped out. The breath left Michael's body. The woman at the top of the stairs was a vision. She was wearing the silver vautour gown, the very dress Tiffany had screamed for yesterday. On this woman, it didn't look like a dress. It looked like liquid starlight draped over a statue. Her hair, dark and glossy, cascaded down her back in waves. She wore a necklace of sapphires and diamonds that glittered so intensely it was hard to look directly at it. She held her head high, radiating a power that made the air in the room feel thinner. She looked like a queen surveying her subjects. She began to descend the stairs, her hand resting lightly on her father's arm. Michael squinted. The lighting was dramatic, casting shadows. There was something familiar about her walk, the tilt of her chin. That dress, Tiffany gasped, clutching the tablecloth. That bitch. That's my dress. She's the one who bought it. Quiet, Michael whispered, leaning forward. His heart was hammering a frantic rhythm against his ribs. Tiffany, shut up. The woman reached the bottom of the stairs. The spotlight widened, illuminating her face clearly for the first time. She looked directly into the crowd. She didn't smile. She looked fierce. Michael felt the room spin. He gripped the edge of the table so hard his knuckles turned white. It wasn't possible. It couldn't be. The woman he had left 3 days ago. The woman he had called mediocre. The woman he had kicked out of their suburban house because she clipped coupons. Celine. No. Michael whispered the word, escaping his lips like a dying breath. No, no, no. What is it? Tiffany snapped, looking at him. You know her. Michael turned to Tiffany, his eyes wide with a terror she couldn't understand. Tiffany. That's Celine. Tiffany looked back at the staircase. She squinted. She let out a sharp, incredulous laugh. Your ex, the frumpy one. Don't be stupid, Michael. That woman is dripping in millions. Your ex wears sweaters from Walmart. That is a sterling. I'm telling you, Michael said, his voice trembling. That is my wife. At that moment, as if she could hear them from across the ballroom, Selina turned her gaze toward the back of the room, toward the kitchen doors, toward the potted fern. She locked eyes with Michael. Even from 50 feet away, he saw the look. It wasn't love. It wasn't sadness. It was a look of absolute, terrifying recognition. She slowly raised her champagne flute in his direction. A toast, a challenge, a goodbye. Then she turned away, took her father's arm, and walked into the crowd of billionaires who parted for her like the Red Sea. Michael sank back into his chair, the realization crashing over him like a tidal wave. He hadn't just left his wife. He had left the princess of the very kingdom he was trying to beg entry into, and he had brought the court jester with him. The ballroom was a sea of black tuxedos and designer gowns, a swirling galaxy of wealth where laughter sounded like tinkling coins. But at table 19 the air was stagnant. Michael couldn't take his eyes off Celine. She was currently circulating near the orchestra pit, surrounded by a phalanx of admirers. He watched as the CEO of a major banking conglomerate, a man Michael had been trying to get a meeting with for 3 years, bent down to kiss her hand. He saw Celine laugh, a genuine, sparkling sound he hadn't heard in years. It wasn't the quiet chuckle she gave when they watched movies on their worn-out sofa. It was the confident laugh of a woman who owned the room. "Stop staring at her," Tiffany hissed, stabbing her fork into a piece of dry chicken. "It's a trick. It has to be." "It's not a trick, Tiffany," Michael murmured, wiping sweat from his upper lip. His mind was racing, rewriting the history of his marriage. He remembered the time he complained about the mortgage interest rate rising, and the next day the bank called to say there had been a clerical error and lowered it to nearly 0. He remembered how he always got reservations at fully booked restaurants, last minute, when Celine made the call. He remembered the junk car. She drove a Honda. He realized now it wasn't because she couldn't afford better. It was because she didn't care. "She's playing a role," Tiffany insisted, her voice rising. The alcohol was making her sloppy. "She's probably a hired actress, or maybe she's sleeping with the old man. That's it. She's Alexander Sterling's sugar baby, and they're passing it off as a father-daughter thing to save face. Disgusting." "Tiffany, keep your voice down," Michael begged, looking around. "You don't understand. If that is really Celine Sterling, my career is over. I'm trying to get a contract with her father's company tonight. If she tells him what? Tiffany snapped. That you upgraded, that you left a boring housewife for a woman with style. Any man would understand that. She stood up, smoothing down her sequined red dress. I'm going to the bathroom, and on the way back I'm going to walk right past her. I want to see the panic in her eyes when she realizes we aren't afraid of her. Tiffany don't. But she was already walking away, her hips swaying aggressively, cutting a path through the crowd like a crimson blade. Michael sat alone at the wobbly table. He felt small. He looked at the portfolio case under his chair, filled with his architectural designs. He had felt so proud of them this morning. Now they felt like drawings made by a child in crayon. Across the room, Celine saw the flash of red sequins approaching. She didn't flinch. She was currently speaking with Mr. Henderson, the head of the City Zoning Board. "And the proposal for the waterfront park?" Celine asked softly. "Approved, Ms. Sterling." Henderson beamed. "Anything for the community." "Excellent." Celine's eyes shifted. She saw Tiffany coming. Tiffany wasn't going to the bathroom. She was making a beeline for Celine. The crowd naturally parted, sensing the friction. Tiffany stopped 3 feet away from Celine. Up close, the difference was brutal. Tiffany's makeup was heavy, cracking slightly under the heat of the lights. Celine's skin looked like porcelain. Tiffany's dress looked like a costume. Celine's gown looked like art. "So," Tiffany said, her voice loud enough to stop the conversations nearby. "You clean up nice. Who paid for the rental?" The circle of elites around Celine fell silent. Mr. Henderson adjusted his glasses, looking shocked. Celine slowly turned to face Tiffany. She didn't look angry. She looked bored. "Hello, Tiffany," Celine said coolly. "I see you found the buffet. I hope the chicken at the back of the room was to your liking." Tiffany flushed. "Don't talk down to me. You think because you put on some diamonds you're better than me? We all know who you are. You're Michael's charity case ex-wife." She looked around at the guests, seeking validation. "She used to clip coupons. She counts pennies. This is all a sham." The crowd didn't laugh. They stared at Tiffany with a mixture of pity and disdain. In this world, discussing money so crudely was the ultimate sin. "Tiffany," Celine said, stepping forward. She lowered her voice so only Tiffany and the immediate circle could hear. "You are embarrassing yourself. And more importantly, you are embarrassing Michael. If you truly want to help his career, you will turn around, go back to table 19, and sit in silence until the valet brings your car." "You can't tell me what to do," Tiffany practically shrieked. "I am the future, Mrs. Vance. The future Mrs. Vance." Celine repeated, savoring the words. "Yes, you are welcome to the title. I certainly don't need it anymore." Celine gestured to a security guard standing in the shadows. He stepped forward instantly. "Is there a problem, Ms. Sterling?" The guard asked, his hand resting on his earpiece. "No problem, James." Celine smiled. This guest was just lost. She was looking for the exit. Please keep an eye on her. We wouldn't want her to trip. Tiffany opened her mouth to scream, but the sheer wall of social pressure slammed into her. Dozens of the most powerful people in the city were staring at her like she was a cockroach on a wedding cake. She turned on her heel and stomped away, tears of rage pricking her eyes. She rushed back to the table where Michael was hiding behind his champagne glass. "We are leaving," Tiffany hissed, grabbing her purse. "Now!" "We can't," Michael whispered, his face pale. "Look." He pointed to the stage. Alexander Sterling had returned to the microphone, but he wasn't alone. He was motioning for someone to join him. I would like to invite the lead architect of the night's potential partner firm to the stage, Alexander announced. Mr. Michael Vance. Is he here? Michael froze. His heart stopped. He wants me, Michael stammered. Hope irrational and blinding surged through him. Maybe he doesn't know. Maybe he just likes my work. Celine kept it professional. She didn't tell him. Go, Tiffany pushed him. Go up there, show her. Michael stood up. He buttoned his jacket. He walked through the ballroom, the crowd parting for him. He felt the adrenaline wash away the fear. It's about the work, he told himself. I'm a genius architect. Sterling cares about profit, not his daughter's love life. He reached the stage steps. Alexander Sterling looked down at him. The older man wasn't smiling. His eyes were dark, deep tunnels of judgment. Michael stepped up to the podium. The microphone hummed. He looked out at the sea of faces. He saw Tiffany standing on her chair at the back, cheering silently. Then he looked at the front row. Right in the center, Celine was sitting there. She crossed her legs, the silver gown shimmering. She locked eyes with him. And then she smiled. It was a terrifying, wolfish smile. Mr. Vance, Alexander Sterling, said, his voice amplified across the hall. Thank you for joining us. It's an honor, sir, Michael said, his voice cracking slightly. I have my portfolio right here. That won't be necessary. Alexander cut him off. We aren't here to discuss your drawings, Michael. We are here to discuss your liabilities. The silence in the grand ballroom was absolute. Even the air conditioning seemed to hold its breath. Michael stood at the podium, the heat of the spotlight burning the back of his neck. Liabilities, sir? I don't understand. My firm is solvent. We have excellent projections. Alexander Sterling stepped aside, and to Michael's horror, Celine stood up from the front row and descended the stairs. She didn't stand next to her father. She stood at the center podium, taking the microphone that Michael was reaching for. The Sterling global conglomerate values integrity above all else, Celine said, her voice smooth, calm, and amplified to every corner of the room. We build foundations that last. We do not build on shifting sands. And Mr. Vance, your foundation is entirely artificial. Celine, please, Michael whispered off mic. Don't do this. Not here. Celine ignored him. She pulled a remote control from the podium stand. A massive screen descended behind them. Mr. Vance came here tonight believing he is a self-made man, Celine addressed the crowd. He believes his lifestyle, his car, and his ability to support a mistress are results of his architectural genius. Click. The screen flared to life. It showed a bank statement, a joint account under the name Vance Household. For 5 years, Celine narrated, I transferred funds into this account under the guise of freelance graphic design work. In reality, this money came from my private trust. It paid off the mortgage of our home in year 2. Michael, you thought you were paying the mortgage every month? No. You were paying into a savings account I set up for you. A savings account you liquidated 3 days ago to buy a yellow diamond ring. A gasp rippled through the crowd. Michael felt his knees buckle. He had drained that account. He thought it was equity. Click. The screen changed. It showed a document from a car dealership. The BMW you leased, Celine continued. You didn't qualify for the credit check, Michael. Your debt-to-income ratio was too high. The dealership called me. I co-signed as a guarantor using a shell corporation. I am the reason you drive that car. And Celine paused, turning to look directly at table 19, where Tiffany was standing frozen, her mouth agape. The credit card. Click. A massive image of a black credit card appeared on screen. It was the card Michael had given to Tiffany, the one she had used to flaunt her wealth at the boutique, the one she had waved in Celine's face. "This is a supplementary card issued to the spouse of a Sterling Prime account holder," Celine said. "Michael, you never questioned why you had a limit of $50,000 a month, despite earning a fraction of that. I paid the balance. Every single month." Celine turned to Michael, her eyes hard as diamonds. "You didn't buy that ring for your mistress, Michael. I did. You didn't take her to dinner. I did. Every expensive breath you have taken for the last 5 years was authorized by me because I loved you, and I wanted you to feel like a king." She leaned in closer to the microphone, her voice dropping to a lethal whisper that echoed like thunder. "But you didn't want a queen, Michael. You wanted a fan. And when you brought that woman," she pointed a manicured finger at Tiffany, "into the boutique owned by my family to buy a dress designed by my friend, using my money, you made a fatal error." Michael was trembling violently. He looked at the crowd. They weren't looking at him with respect anymore. They were looking at him like he was a fraud, a parasite. "Now," Celine said, her voice brightening with faux cheerfulness, "about that business contract." She looked at her father. Alexander nodded. "Sterling Global is acquiring your firm Vance Architecture as of this morning," Celine announced. "We bought the majority stake from your partners, who were all too happy to sell when they heard about the reputational risk you pose." Michael grabbed the podium to keep from falling. You're my boss." "No." Celine smiled. "I'm not your boss, Michael, because you're fired. And," she added, looking toward the back of the room, "Tiffany Baines!" The spotlight swiveled violently, pinning Tiffany against the back wall near the kitchen doors. She shielded her eyes, looking like a deer in the headlights. "That ring on your finger," Celine said. "Since it was purchased with funds from a trust that specifies spousal use only, and you are not the spouse, that constitutes theft." Celine checked her watch. "My lawyers froze the assets 10 minutes ago. The credit card in your purse is dead. The car valet has been instructed not to release the BMW, as the guarantor me has revoked privileges." "So," Celine concluded, looking at the two of them. Michael broken on stage, Tiffany trapped in the spotlight. "You are welcome to leave, but you'll have to walk. And Tiffany, you might want to run. The ring is technically stolen property, and I believe the police are waiting in the lobby." Celine placed the microphone back on the stand. The sound was a dull thud that signaled the end of Michael Vance's life as he knew it. She turned to her father. "Shall we dance, Dad?" "We shall." Alexander beamed. As the orchestra began to play a waltz, security guards, gently but firmly, escorted a weeping Michael off the stage. At the back of the room, Tiffany was seen frantically trying to pull the ring off her swollen finger as 2 officers approached her. Michael looked back one last time. He saw Celine spinning in the arms of her father, the silver dress flaring out like a supernova. She didn't look back. She didn't look sad. She looked free. He walked out into the cool night air, his pockets empty, his future destroyed, and the echo of his own arrogance ringing in his ears. The heavy oak doors of the Sterling Imperial Hotel closed behind Michael and Tiffany, with a finality that felt like a prison sentence. The muffled sounds of the orchestra and the clinking of crystal faded, replaced by the harsh ambient noise of the city street. It was raining, a cold, miserable drizzle that slicked the pavement and soaked through Michael's thin tuxedo jacket instantly. "Do something!" Tiffany shrieked, her voice raw. The mascara was now running in earnest, creating black streaks down her cheeks. Call a car. Call a lawyer. You said you were the architect of the future. Fix this. Michael stared at his phone. The screen was cracked, a spiderweb fracture from when he had dropped it in his haste to leave the stage. He had 0 notifications, no congratulations, no job offers, just an alert from his bank account overdrawn. I can't, Michael whispered, his voice hollow. She froze everything, Tiffany. The cards, the accounts. It's all gone. The ring. Tiffany frantically tugged at the yellow diamond on her finger. Her knuckle was swollen from the salty food and the alcohol. It's stuck. Help me get it off before they come. But it was too late. 2 officers who had been discreetly waiting by the valet stand stepped forward. They didn't look angry. They looked tired, like they had seen this scene 1,000 times before. Ms. Baines, one officer asked, we have a report of grand larceny regarding a piece of jewelry in your possession. The claimant, Ms. Celine Sterling, has provided proof of purchase and a statement that the item was unauthorized for transfer. It was a gift, Tiffany yelled, backing away. My fiancé gave it to me. A fiancé who used a corporate card he wasn't authorized to use for personal gifts, the officer corrected calmly. You can hand it over now, or you can come down to the station and we can have it removed there. Your choice. Michael watched as Tiffany, the woman who had sneered at Celine for wearing department store rags, used her teeth to help pry the ring off her finger. She threw it into the officer's evidence bag, with a sob of pure materialistic grief. You are pathetic, Tiffany spat at Michael as the officers took her information. I'm going to my mother's. Don't call me. Don't text me. If I ever see you again, I'll scream. She hailed a yellow cab, not a limo, not an Uber, black, and vanished into the rainy night. Michael was left standing alone on the curb. The valet looked at him, keys in hand. Sir, the BMW. Michael opened his mouth to ask for the keys, then remembered Celine's words. Guarantor revoked. Keep it, Michael croaked. He began to walk. He walked for 40 blocks, his expensive Italian loafers blistering his feet, the rain ruining the silk lapels of his suit. He walked all the way back to the small, damp apartment he had rented for Tiffany, the one he could no longer pay for. The next morning, the sun rose, but it brought no warmth to Michael Vance. He arrived at his architecture firm at 9:00 a.m., hoping that maybe, just maybe, Selina had been bluffing. Maybe he still had a job. Maybe he could salvage his reputation. His keycard didn't work. The little light on the reader blinked an unforgiving red. A security guard, one Michael had never bothered to learn the name of, opened the door. He held a cardboard box. Mr. Vance, the guard said, not making eye contact. Your personal effects. You are not permitted on the premises. I need to speak to the partners, Michael demanded, though his voice lacked any authority. I built this firm. The firm is under new management, the guard said, handing him the box. It was light, a framed photo of him and Tiffany, a stapler, a coffee mug that said, Boss. Sterling Global is doing a full audit. They suggested you get a lawyer, but, well, good luck finding one who will go against the Sterlings. Michael took the box. He sat on a bench in the park across the street, watching the building he used to walk into, with his head held high. Weeks turned into months. The divorce was swift and brutal. Michael had no money for a high-powered attorney, so he ended up with a court-appointed representative who looked bored. Selina didn't even show up to court. She sent a team of 5 lawyers in grey suits who laid out the paperwork with surgical precision. Michael walked away with nothing. No alimony. No assets. Just the debt he had accrued on his own personal credit cards, trying to keep up the facade of a billionaire lifestyle. He moved into a basement studio in Queens. He applied to other firms, but the name Sterling was a gatekeeper. No one wanted to hire the man who had publicly humiliated the industry's most powerful heiress. He was radioactive. 6 months later, Michael was working the counter at a hardware store. It was honest work, but it was hard. His hands, once used for drafting delicate blueprints, were now rough from hauling bags of cement. It was lunchtime. He sat on a milk crate in the back alley, eating a cold sandwich. A discarded newspaper lay on the ground next to him. The wind blew the pages open. Michael froze. There on the cover of Business and Life magazine was Celine. She wasn't wearing a ball gown. She was wearing a hard hat and a white blazer, standing in front of a massive, gleaming skyscraper, the new sustainable housing project that Vance Architecture had failed to design, but which Sterling Global had successfully built. The headline read, "The Queen of Acquisitions." How Celine Sterling redefined the city skyline and found happiness on her own terms. She looked radiant, strong, and completely, utterly indifferent to the past. Next to her in the photo stood a man. He was tall with kind eyes and a rugged look. The caption identified him as Julian Thorne, a renowned landscape architect and her partner in business and life. Michael stared at the photo. He remembered the coupon clipping. He remembered the quiet nights. He remembered the woman who had loved him when he was nobody. He realized then that he hadn't just lost a fortune. He hadn't just lost a career. He had been holding a diamond in his hand, mistook it for glass, and threw it away to pick up a piece of glitter that washed away in the rain. Michael closed the newspaper. He finished his sandwich. "Vance," the manager yelled from inside. "Customer needs help with the plumbing aisle." "Coming," Michael said. He stood up, dusted off his apron, and walked back into the mediocrity he had once feared knowing, now that it was exactly what he deserved. And that is the story of Michael and Tiffany. They chased the illusion of wealth so hard that they ran right past the reality of it. Michael spent 5 years looking for a better life, never realizing that the woman cutting coupons at his kitchen table could have bought and sold his entire world 10 times over. He wanted a partner who shone like gold, but he forgot that gold is cold, heavy, and lifeless. Celine, on the other hand, proved that true class isn't about how much you spend. It's about knowing your worth and never letting anyone discount you. What do you think? Did Celine take her revenge too far? Or was it exactly what Michael and Tiffany deserved? If you were Celine, would you have revealed your identity sooner? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this story of karma and justice, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a story about cheaters getting exactly what's coming to them. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.